illustrator Molly Trainor, and designer Nanette Stevenson, who collaborated together to make a picture book, an award-winning picture book called Hello Water. This is a presentation for Alaska Book Week 2020. And here is the picture book, Hello Water, Snowflakes to Glaciers, A Wild Alaska Story. Author Taylor Hoku Hayden was 9 years old when she first visited Portage Glacier, Alaska. She was holding a small chunk of ice in her hand, smiling for a photo, when she heard a sound like thunder and turned to watch a calving piece of ice crack from the glacier's terminus and crash into Portage Lake. Today, the glacier has receded so far that it is no longer in view of the visitor center. Hayden loves to watch the boar tide of Turnagain Arm, and she once watched dozens of beluga whales lope after the 6-foot wall wave of water as it rushed into the inlet with the oncoming tide. Hoku is a busy mother of 2 boys. She also works as an air traffic controller and is currently stationed in Hawaii. Illustrator Molly Trainor grew up in Nome, Alaska, and as a girl enjoyed very few boundaries. It was this freedom that allowed her to daydream and create with abandon. Although she and her family have moved many times over the years, she has found that her work is still greatly informed by the time she spent creating during those long Alaska winters as a child. She also is a mom and lives and works in Anchorage, Alaska. Nanette Stevenson is an art director and designer and was the former art director of children's books at G.P. Putnam Sons and Philomel Books in New York City. While in the New York children's publishing field for over 20 years, the books Owl Moon, Lon Popo, Mirette on the High Wire, 7 Blind Mice, and Officer Buckle and Gloria all earned Caldecott medals under her art direction. She was born in New York City, grew up on Long Island, and graduated with a degree in fine arts from Skidmore College. For the last 25 years, Nanette has lived and managed her own design business in Anchorage, Alaska. So we're just going to have a conversation today about how Hello Water came to be. Here are a few of the beautiful illustrations that Molly designed for the book. And we will talk a little bit about how things got started on this project. And we'll come back to how to get a copy of the book if you're interested in a moment. So, hi, there's everybody. So I thought I would just start by asking how this collaboration came about. Typically, authors and illustrators don't collaborate on books. The author's story is accepted by a publisher. The illustrator is chosen by a publisher. And so one of the questions I have is, first of all, why is that usually the case, and how did this collaboration work?
I'll start by telling a little bit about how this particular collaboration started. It is my first professionally published children's book, and I was attending the Alaska Writers Guild conference one year, specifically because the SCBWI was there and they were talking about self-publishing. So while at the conference, I happened to sit down next to Molly, and we were chatting about her work, and I noticed a contest that the Alaska region's SCBWI was putting on, and I entered a contest for a manuscript for a children's book, which was accepted as the winner. And then you guys could take it away from there, I think.
Right, there was a stack of, it was outside one of our intensives, a huge stack of applications for illustrators to enter a drawing, and I didn't think anything would come of it, and it was a couple months later when I heard from, I think I heard from Kaylene. Is that right, Kaylene? Did you contact us?
Well, I did. At the time we were looking, I was the director for the Kenai Mountains Turnagain Arm National Heritage Area. And we were considering, we had published a number of books about history. We were thinking about doing a book on natural history of some sort, and especially a children's picture book. That was something we hadn't done before. And so we had put a stack of, I guess, applications for people who were interested in maybe writing or illustrating a children's picture book, and you guys applied.
So sort of a non-traditional way of getting together as a bookmaking team, from what I understand. But I think we're definitely enriched because of the interaction that we had with one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think traditionally in book publishing, some of the reasons publishers sometimes try to take a well-known name, or maybe if they have an author that's not so well-known, they'll try and match them with a more established illustrator, so that when they're selling the books, one of the names will stand out to the booksellers. I think traditionally they also try to keep a separation between the two, so that the artist doesn't feel that they lose independence and that they have their own vision. But I think in our case this time, because everyone's experience in Alaska, it's so specific to the KMTA, Kenai Mountain Turnagain Arm area, and we were all very respectful and worked together. I think it only strengthened the process.
I think the other thing that's interesting about this project is both Molly and Hoku are first-time illustrator and author. This was their first time making a children's picture book. So, so we had Nanette's depth of experience to sort of shepherd the whole project forward.
That's probably true. Picture books, probably more so. Traditionally, most of the time, Kaylene and I are doing sort of books about history and with photographs and whatnot. But there is a process to it, and I am sort of traditionalist in terms of how I start a book project, and I believe in doing a dummy, hand sketches, and working that through and laying out pages and all of that, and then I can't quite remember. When we met, we went over things. Hoku, you see the dummy at different points?
I did, and I was surprised to even have a part in sort of helping with the layout, about what pages would have what text on them. And then there was a lot of consideration about what I saw as I wrote it, that we applied to those dummy sketches, so that was something that I didn't expect as an author. I don't know if that's the experience that most authors would have with their manuscript, where they have the opportunity to sit down with the artist and the designer and come up with sort of what those pages might look like. But at the early stage of it, I did have the opportunity to view those sketches and to give my input about different ideas as we pictured water going through this journey, because it was really just like bringing water to life as a person. And I think that my vision, to bounce that off of the illustrator about how I saw the face of water, that was quite unique in my opinion.
Plus, you were working on the text with Kaylene. It went through some changes as well, from the first manuscript that she saw until the finished book.
Certainly, the manuscript that I submitted when I applied for the contest, I actually have it sitting right here, and it's almost a completely different manuscript. And I think that would be the biggest thing that I learned as an author, is that when you're trying to tell a story, especially to children, is that what you're trying to say might not always be what they're reading in the words. And the most important part about telling a story is that it's heard the way that you want it to be heard, and not so much that the words that you're using are your original words. Does that make sense?
And to take that one step further, with a picture book, the words and the pictures are not the same thing, because it's so minimal that they can complement each other and sort of work together. They don't necessarily have to be literally exactly what's happening in the text.
Sure.
In fact, there's kind of a playfulness sometimes between the illustrations and the text, and things that the illustrations are saying that the text isn't, is kind of what Nanette's saying. And then there was a repetition in each of those pages. But let's, for people who haven't seen the book, maybe we could describe what it's about.
I got the idea for the story itself when I was visiting in Juneau. We were at the Mendenhall Glacier, and it was a beautiful day. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to go to Juneau, but I've only been once, and there were blue skies and no wind, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And I hear those days are pretty rare. So we were at the shore of the Mendenhall Lake, and there in the lake itself was just this tiny chunk of ice that was floating along. And I looked to my mom, who I was with at the time, and I said, I wonder if that piece of ice knows where it came from. And she said, I don't know. And I said, I wonder if it knows where it's going. You know, and so then that was the birth of the story of Hello Water. Very, I have a fascination with glaciers, what can I say? And so originally I thought of a book that highlighted all the glaciers around the world, and then it got this to be this like giant idea about endangered species interacting with this water as it took all these different forms. And I just got like creative-itis, I guess, and my ideas got enormous. So the nice thing about stumbling upon this contest was that it really gave a lane that Hello Water could drive down instead of trying to go in all these different directions. And I love that that it was the KMTA corridor that we ended up highlighting, because there's such a special place in my heart for that entire Turning an Arm area. When we lived in South Anchorage, I really just wanted to live in Girdwood because that's my favorite place in the world. But the story was really just, I guess, like dropped. I like to say downloaded. The story was downloaded in me that one day, seeing just a little chunk of ice floating across the water.
Mm-hmm. And Molly, what, you know, I remember a lot of conversations we had about how to personify water in the illustration.
Oh, right. I used my daughter's face, and I I posed her, you know, I hang her upside down over the couch or something and take a photo of her and do a bunch of sketches. I put her in different lighting, and so yeah, it's my daughter in different poses. Her name is Kivli, which translates to reflected light off of water. And I thought that was appropriate.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was surprised. I was going to say how closely we followed those early sketches, you know, the early layout. I was looking at those, and we didn't deviate from those sketches really much. Maybe a little expression here or there, but really.
Once they had it honed in, that was it, wasn't it?
But it took a while to get there, because I remember it was sort of a new concept for you. Wouldn't you say, Molly? I mean, I think your instincts were, oh, just start making the art. And
yeah, that's right. I've spent, I think, 20 years creating these books that are written in the Dene language, you know, and so, and they're always in a really big hurry. They're just like quickly, there isn't much feedback, and they're in a hurry most of the time. So to have the three of you focus so intently on this project was really unusual for me. It was great.
It takes a little adjusting, and it's hard, because one of the things we were dealing with was what technique you were going to use, because you started doing some samples as paintings, didn't you? They were
right, yeah,
color or something.
Yeah, and then I realized I wouldn't be able to complete the book if I kept that style, so I had to find a process that I could move faster with. So or a style that I can move faster. So you can, I sent in samples of my work and they were all over the place. They're like, I kind of just wanted you to pick a style and we could go forward. But then I realized I wouldn't be able to complete the project if we went in a certain direction. So I had to rework that.
And you went to
This,
photo.
what style? Oh yeah, I was going to say, what style did you choose, and then how did that work for you as opposed to painting?
Well, we went with digital artwork, which is easy to edit. It's fast and it works in this collaborative environment where there are a lot of people involved, and you know there may be many edits. I couldn't predict that really, so all the files were created in Photoshop on many different layers, so that if an edit were needed, for example, so this would be a separate layer, and that would be a separate layer, and that would be a separate layer, and then whatever edits we needed, we could quickly rework it. Yeah.
Can you give an example of an edit that you might have changed, something that you changed that was?
I remember on that particular, it was a little flat and we were pushing for more contrast in the water, the edge of the lake there, to make that look more like gravel. Wasn't that, you put more flowers in, you worked
more flowers, that's right. I think we added fireweed, and I thought, what? How can I forget fireweed? It's crazy. But each of these images are a specific location. Yeah, I should have written that down because I can't remember now, but they all had a reference point within the KMTA.
And that whole concept did also evolve as we were working on the book, that each spread would have a location. That really clarified as we went along.
And we're talking a location within the National Heritage Area, not a location on the files or what have you, but an actual place in the National Heritage Area. So every spread, every 2 pages that face each other, was a place that you could actually recognize somewhere along the National Heritage Area. And so it was kind of you could have sort of a hide and seek or a search and find aspect to the book for children. You've been there before, remember, kind of those sorts of things. There was something else that was repetitive for each spread. Can you guys talk about that and how that evolved, which was a lot of fun, and the kids are able to look at each spread and find these 2 things.
I'm going to interject there because when I transitioned this from my big global idea to a book for the KMTA, I wanted it to be a raven. And I wanted there to be a raven in each picture that was kind of taking us along in this journey that water went through. Because I think one of the things for me that was important is that even water doesn't understand the change that's happening within its own timeline. But this raven always knew, and so if we look at the book from the perspective of water, then we're going to take the journey along with it. But if we looked at it from the perspective of raven, we can see in this wider lens the whole story and the whole picture of what's happening. So that was one of the things that I was like, can there be a raven on every page, please? And then then Molly just took it from there, and we have this other element that's a part of it.
Oh, and there's something else on every,
the airplane, right? I actually don't remember how that airplane became part of it. I'm on an airstrip. I was out in Girdwood. I live next to the airstrip, and I still live next to an airstrip. I don't know.
I heard one going by.
I don't know. Yeah, it's terrible, but and it's such an iconic part of Alaskan
lifestyle.
Lifestyle. So, and it added a human element to the pages that it might be fun.
And sometimes those elements were really obvious on the page, and other times you kind of had to look for them. And then there's one that's really, really subtle, and that took, that took a little bit of sleuthing for kids to figure out where that was.
Yeah.
So Nanette, what was it like for you? I mean, as far as bringing all of these things together, there's a lot of, there was a lot of coaching for all of us really in this whole process.
Well, it was interesting because having made children's books for all those years within, a formal the New York Publishing House, and it was really the first one I had done here from scratch, and also with digital files. There had always been art, and so there was I had to adapt somewhat to the process. But to me, I was enormously proud. It was exciting to usher it through. I think it's hard because I'm sort of slow, and it was driving Kaylene crazy because we were trying to get this book done and figure out, things like trying to figure out whether if you did paintings, they would have to be photographed or scanned, whereas the digital art ended up being so flexible and so helpful. We could have something for the title page and just pull out a salmon, and we could pull out the plane, and actually the cover. We had done a different sketch, and it had been a top bird's eye view, and it was dramatic, but I always feel like bird's eye views sort of can pull you out of the action, and I had sort of a vision. And this is one of the interior images, and where is it? Here it is. So we were able to use this image, but I could manipulate it to, move things, move the raven over, give more time, darken the face a little. Then Molly did this wonderful lettering to give it all that energy and get things to fit. And we couldn't have done that, or it would have been extremely difficult. So it was exciting. It was exciting to follow the journey of working with Molly and, sharing some of the things that I've learned over the years, and watching her grow and get more confident, and, produce these marvelous pictures that just grew in breadth and depth and color and expression. And, as we sort of searched for what does the face look like? I mean, it's kind of an aesthetic question, but it's also, all different. How do you put a face on water and glaciers and snow? And, to get to the end with the moose and the snow. It was very exciting, very satisfying, a little anxiety provoking. And I was nervous about printing it because I almost always used to be on press, and we did proof it all. And I think they did a good job. I think there was a big team. There was the team that helped us do the pre-press. So, there were other people as well, but it was exciting to see it take form.
What would each of you say was the biggest challenge in this project?
For me, it was being so green and never working with anyone kind of over my shoulder as far as my writing goes. The few things that I have published didn't have any illustrators, and I didn't have need for an editor. And just communicating my story in the appropriate way for the media, and working with the publisher who has much more experience than I did. That the biggest learning process for me was just how to collaborate when coming out with a book project.
Is it surprising how much revision and that there was a benefit? Did you have any regrets of
At
editing?
first, I was so resistant to some of the edits, and to the point of stubbornly digging my heels in and really having to sit with it for about a week before I could even wrap my head around writing it in this new way. And just the process of rewriting that part of it, and then feeling how it flowed so much better. It's like after I broke through that one wall, all of a sudden there was a better flow to everything. And I was able to so easily go back into the rest of the manuscript and make it all follow suit. So it still had this rhythm and this flow like water, which is how I wanted it to feel originally. And I mean, it was there all along. I just had to sort of get through my own biases, my own blockage. So now I have no regrets. Initially, though, I was like, no way, I'm not, but I'm so glad.
It's very hard.
Yeah, it's hard to see anything any other way than you originally imagined it. But I could have never imagined that it would have been as wonderful as it became.
That's really nice to hear, because I mean, that's just I think that's the whole notion of revision being a revisioning of something to become even better than the original vision. So I think that you did a beautiful job, and it was a lot of work, I know.
And it's a delicate relationship. We were all new to each other, and for you working with Kaylene to trust her, and for Molly with me, I mean, that's hard, you know. I mean, you don't quite know. I mean, the relationships of editors and authors over the years have become trusted and, you know, prized and very valuable, but the first time, and to not know, you know, that's hard.
And one of the things I did to get to know Kaylene, and I worked with an editor, her name's Deb Benass, but I read both of their books. So that helped me too get a better understanding of these two strangers, really, who I knew nothing about. And just sitting with Deb's novel, and then a couple of Kaylene's books actually that still sit on my shelf, just watching their style and their writing, and I learned a little bit about both of them. And so that helped me a lot, actually, when it came to the revisions of this book.
Hey, and Molly, how about you? What was your biggest challenge, would you say?
I'd say time, you know, because part of illustration is just sort of letting go, and you can get carried away with that and lose track of the big picture. So I had to keep it cohesive, but you know, the instinct is to get lost. So I'd say that was the biggest challenge, to keep referencing a certain point within the book, to keep it as cohesive as possible. Otherwise, it could have gone in any number of directions on each page. It would have been disastrous. But yeah, learning to keep the big picture in mind while working on it, the minutia. So.
How about you, Nanette?
You know, I guess for me, the biggest challenge was trying to stay what I call in the process, which is staying in the book to see it through, and, you know, looking at something and maybe having to make a suggestion, but realizing that it's, you know, Molly's been working away and she's trying to make a deadline and she's been trying to get this done. And yet somehow trying to stay true to the book, find the vision, stay with it, and just, so trying to get the book we want, but also get it made, get it out, make sure that it is, you know, a good quality book, and not drive everybody crazy in the process. So I suppose that would be my, because I think it is a very delicate process being an art director. You know, I think you're sort of asking the artist to jump, and you have to.
You're the author, you know, there's.
Author, yes, and that we'll be there to catch you. And I said, if you do your job and you're the only one who can do the writing or the illustrating, you know, we are here to make the book and it will get done. But I think it is a process. And it's quite a long one in terms, especially the art. There's just a lot of art. There's a lot of pictures in there, and there's a lot of detail. And
yeah, and it basically took 2 years from the time that we decided to go with this manuscript and have a conversation with all of the 4 of us, and for the book to actually be in our hands. So, and that was a revelation to me too, because I thought, I guess you think, you know, a 300-page book takes, you know, say a year or 2 years or 3. A picture book at 32 pages probably will take that amount or less time. And as it turns out, you know, it's at least as much time as a full-length, you know, adult book with photos, say. So that was a revelation to me too. So we all learned a lot. Thank you, Nanette.
yeah, I think it was hard. At the beginning was a bit slow, I think, because we were trying to figure out the technique, trying to figure out, just there were a lot of things and we really hadn't done it either, just as the Ember Press, the publisher, you know, there were a lot of things that we needed to figure out. And for me too, it was like, how do we get this done? And that was complicated. So I think, you know, it depends. I mean, you can spend whatever amount of time on something, but
well, it was well worth all the time spent because Hello Water won national awards in both, well, in illustration, in as author and as a design. So everyone should, you know, needs to give themselves a pat on the back because this garnered national attention. It's a book that is great for science and in the third, fourth grade levels. It's a fun book for kids, but it's also an educational book, and it has a lot of really great aspects that are great for education, great for just good fun, and it's a beautiful book, both as in words and in illustrations. Is there anything anyone else would like to talk about as far as the making of this book? Any kinds of advice you might give to other authors or illustrators in starting this kind of a project?
For authors anyway, I would say just trust your voice, but also trust the process. I was hesitant to trust the process at first and thought that mine was the only voice that mattered. But there's something else in there. So just trust your voice and trust the process.
That's great.
And work with somebody that you feel comfortable with.
The collaboration was the most important part for me. I feel pretty lucky to have been able to work with all of you. This is a real eye-opener. And, you know, 1 in a million. So yeah, very thankful to have been able to work with all of you.
I think it's a special book. You know, I was proud. Children who have looked at it have loved seeing the belugas. They've, you know, they look at it and they see real Alaska there. My husband, when he looked at the plane, he said, she did a really good job. It's accurate. And he doesn't think almost it's accurate. So it was nice that it was correct, you know, in terms of place. And I think that honored what we were trying to accomplish. And Kaylene was the one who kind of kept it all together and kept the trains running and has done all the promotion and all the different things for it. And it's amazing what we've accomplished.
Yeah, and I think that Ember Press is incredibly lucky and to have Nanette as a book designer. I mean, she comes top notch. I mean, how many authors and illustrators get to say they have a Caldecott award-winning designer work on their book? So I think we're just super lucky for that. And thank you, Nanette, for all of the expertise and good grace that you brought to all of us in this process.
Well, thank you.
And so if we're all, do you have anyone have any final thoughts? If not, I'll go to share screen and people can look at how to find.
You know, I do have one final thought because we all are meeting here today talking about this book because of a contest that we entered, and the awards that we won are because we submitted our book for those awards. So I would say don't ever be afraid to just put your work out there. Always submit for everything. You know, Wayne Gretzky says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So just take every shot you get.
Great advice. I like that a lot.
It's true. And Kaylene's been, again, I mean, you know, doing things like that, you know, putting it out for the different awards and getting things on social media so that people see the book and possibly, you know, maybe doing a curriculum for it and sharing it and hopefully, you know, getting it into the schools, and there's a life. So you're absolutely right. I mean, you never know. And conferences, whatever form they take now, you know, that's where editors are, art directors, you get seen. And, you know, here we are in Alaska and we made a book.
Yeah. Well, thanks to everyone for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And if anyone has any final thoughts, please let us know. We hope that everyone who's watching today will take a look at Hello Water, Snowflakes to Glaciers, A Wild Alaska Story. It's really a book about transformation, about growth, about the changes not only that water makes, but that really we all can make as we move through time and in space. And it's been an honor to work with each of you in this project, and thank you for all being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.